Welcome to Adventures with Kendall. Hi, I'm here at Hume Lake. There's some unique history in this area. Let me explain. Hume Lake's history begins with the logging industry within the Sierra Nevada mountains. The Hume Bennett Lumber Company was formed in 1905 when Ira Bennett and Thomas Hume purchased the Sanger Lumber Company. Bennett was the general manager for the American Lumber Company of Albuquerque, New Mexico. However, he did not have the finances to purchase the company by himself, so he turned to one of his former associates for financial banking, the wealthy Thomas Hume, who also had a logging operation within the state of Michigan. Together, they would form the Hume Bennett Lumber Company. Lumber was to be cut from 10 Mile Creek, a tributary of the Kings River, just east of Converse Basin. 10 Mile Creek flowed through an area known as Long Meadow. The Long Meadow location was a promising site for two functions. It would allow for a reservoir to be built to store cut logs from surrounding forests and float them to an adjacent sawmill. The reservoir will also provide water to the flume to transport rough-cut lumber out of the mountains to the Central Valley below. The dam for the reservoir is the world's first reinforced concrete multiple arch dam. This was designed by John S. Eastwood, who was one of California's pioneers of hydroelectric design. He designed the concept for the Big Creek Hydroelectric Project located in the Sierra National Forest. Throughout his career, John Eastwood designed a total of 17 dams in the western United States and Canada. John Eastwood was hired to build the dam in 1908, and it was completed in 114 days at the end of 1909, along with the adjacent sawmill next to the dam. Logs were dumped into the lake by rail and floated out the reservoir to the mill. Lumber was rough cut and dried in kilns next to 10 Mile Creek before being transported to the valley by water flume down to the town of Sanger. According to some research, the Hume Lake flume was one of the longest log flumes created, eventually reaching an estimated to be a whopping 62 miles. Other flumes within the Sierra National Forest include the Fresno Flume and Irrigation Company, which operate between Shaver Lake and Clovis, California, and the Madera Lumber Company, which operate from Camp Sugar Pine down to Madera, California. But it's estimated that the Hume Lake flume was the longest of the three. The logging in the area surrounding the lake ceased in 1924 after a devastating forest fire. The U.S. Forest Service purchased the entire logging operation, including the dam, reservoir, and all the property holdings in 1935, incorporating it all into the Sequoia National Forest. The dam and reservoir survive today with little change from their appearance in 1908. The dam stands at 61 feet tall and is 667 feet long. The dam has 12 buttresses spanning 50 feet on the downstream side. The dam height was set at 61 feet to not inundate a tract of land at the reservoir edge that was not owned by the Hume Bennett Company. Next to the dam are the remains of the lumber mill that once sat here, whether it's the foundations or bits of tools like this cable. There's also this concrete block with a distinctive V shape in it. This was a section of the large flume that went up from this mill down into the town of Sanger, California, where the lumber would be loaded onto freight trains of the Southern Pacific Railroad for widespread distribution. As you can see, there are little bits of wood for when this was an active logging flume. There are also foundations of the drying kilns that once sat here when this was a fully functioning logging operation. Now, the story of Hume Lake doesn't end with the closure of the lumber company. in order to see what happens next, we'll check out Hume Lake Christian Camp. The camps trace their origins back to January 1946. The camp founders were from the nearby town of Dinuba, who had purchased 320 acres of lakeshore property, including the Hume Lake Hotel, store, service station, post office, 22 cottages, and 22 boats. Since that first summer in 1946, more than 1 million campers have attended camp for worship, religious studies, and recreation. They also host live Christian concerts in the auditorium right over there. Now over here, we get a great look at the long meadow and see why this spot was chosen to create a reservoir. One popular part of the Hume Lake Christian Resort is the Wagon Train Summer Camp. This children's camp is built with a fun Wild West theme that decorates the entire complex. This includes a great stage area and several other buildings carrying on the Western theme. The cabins are built to resemble the covered wagons that roamed across the West and can easily hold 10 campers. A great place to stay if you're wanting to have fun as a kid here at Hume Lake. One of these cabins is a special one, the Virginia, because this was the cabin my mom stayed at when she came to Hume Lake as a kid. There's also a nice creek area that includes a boat ride to a fun playground built in the shape of a U.S. cavalry fort named Fort Logan. And judging by its looks, it must be a really fun place to play here at Wagon Train Camp. One last thing worth pointing out is this collection of old rail equipment, which includes the section of track and train wheels that might have come from the Hume Bennett Lumber Company when they operated their narrow gauge railroad along Hume Lake. Now, if you want to learn more about the Hume Bennett Lumber Company, there's one place to go. And during the research of Hume Lake and its lumber history, we came upon the Sanger Depot Museum, which has a great collection of information about it. So let's go inside and check it out. Open on the first Saturday of the month between 9 a.m. and 3 p.m., the Sanger Depot Museum is a great place to learn of the Hume Bennett logging operations, which includes seeing actual tools, a diorama showcasing the mills and flume operations, and even a section of a replica flume to showcase how these were built. If you'd like to see more about the Sanger Depot Museum, stay tuned for when we do a full episode about the history of the town itself. And who knows, we may show you other landmarks within this community. Well, that was the history of Hume Lake. As you can see, it is quite relaxing and peaceful. Well, it is time for me to end this adventure. See you later, folks, and may your gifts bless the world.